Hello, this is David Lindsley. In this presentation, I'll talk about the many ancient American artifacts and how the overall collection is supported by the Book of Mormon. Throughout the 1800s, as pioneers journeyed westward and settled the new frontier in America, farmers would often find various items buried in the earth as they worked their fields. Items such as arrowheads and pottery, copper, mica, and slate, pipes, carving, coins, and even architectural pieces were all scattered throughout the land. Even remnants of foundations of great structures of unknown origin and purpose were unearthed. Other artifacts were found by both professional archaeologists and local residents as they excavated some of the hundreds of ancient Indian burial mounds scattered throughout the Mississippi and Ohio valleys. The artifacts depict a variety of languages and cultures. Archaeologists in general assume that indigenous tribes in America before Columbus did not have written language or formal civilization. They have assumed that there could not have been contact between the Old World and ancient America until European settlers arrived, and certainly not any record of biblical stories earlier than the 1500s. Faced with the sheer abundance of artifacts, however, some speculate that there may have been an exodus from Jerusalem after the time of Christ to the New World. Or perhaps the artifacts were created by remnants of an ancient group of Phoenicians, or Egyptians, or even the lost tribes of Israel who may have journeyed long ago to America. However, without historical records of these voyages, most archaeologists still dismiss the entire assortment of American artifacts as frauds because they have no other explanation. There seems to be a missing piece to this archaeologic puzzle which would connect the Old World to America. What most archaeologists don't realize is that the Book of Mormon fills in the missing piece to the puzzle. Let's consider this further. The Book of Mormon tells us that the prophet Lehi, who left Jerusalem in 600 BC, traveled to the New World. A second group, referred to as the Mulekites, left Israel about the same time. Centuries earlier, another group, the Jaredites, also traveled from the Old World to North America. So as a start, the Book of Mormon tells us of several voyages of people from the Middle East who established their long-lasting civilizations in North America. The Heartland model is a proposed location for the 1,000-year history recorded in the Book of Mormon. It places the Nephites in the large geographic area of the eastern half of the United States. It suggests regions of Nephite migration from their landing in the Florida area to their final battle in upstate New York at the Hill Cumorah. While there are ancient artifacts found throughout the country, in this video we're going to focus on a few collections discovered within the Heartland model geography as shown on this map. One collection of artifacts was found in Newark, Ohio. They were called the Newark Holy Stones by the local press at the time because of the inscriptions on them. This is a map of the Newark Works earthen mound shapes in Licking County, Ohio. In June 1860, David Wyrick, who was the county surveyor, found a stone artifact in one of the wells or caches along the parallel walls east of the great octagon shape. The stone he found, inscribed with Hebrew letters, is known as the Keystone because of its general shape. However, it is too rounded to actually have served as a keystone. It was apparently intended to be held with the knob in the right hand and turned to read the four sides in succession. It might also have been suspended by the knob for some purpose. Here is shown the Hebrew letters and translation on each of the four sides. Holy of Holies, King of the Earth, the Word of God, the Law of God. Another location where a Newark artifact was found is called the Great Stone Stack, located some 10 miles south of the Great Octagon, and was originally about 55 feet tall with a 200-foot circumference, completely covered in boulders. Local workers removed thousands of wagon loads of boulders for a nearby canal, and farmers excavated a portion of the earth mound underneath the rocks. They found a wooden coffin containing a skeleton. In November 1860, County Surveyor David Wyrick and a team dug further below the level of the coffin. 2 feet down, they discovered a rounded stone box or container. The container was a sandstone box, smooth on the outside and hollowed out within. Inside the stone container was a piece of black limestone inscribed on all sides in a peculiar form of square Hebrew letters. The writing was translated as a condensed version of the Ten Commandments or Decalogue, and this black stone became known as the Decalogue stone. The inscription of the Ten Commandments begins at the non-alphabetic symbol at the top of the front, runs down the left side of the front, around every available space on the back and sides, and then back up the right side of the front to the end where it begins, as though it was to be read repetitively. The robed and bearded figure on the front is identified as Moses by the letters over his head. This chart shows a comparison between modern Hebrew and the more ancient script found on the Decalogue stone. A small stone bowl was also found with the Decalogue stone. Interestingly, stone vessels were typically used by Jews who strictly kept their purity laws. This stone bowl, therefore, fits right in with the Decalogue stone as an appropriate ritual object. It is highly doubtful that Wyrick, or anyone else in Newark in 1860, would have been aware of this arcane Jewish practice. The easy way to make a box to hold an important object is out of wood. Carving it from stone is unnecessarily difficult and would be justified only if the stone itself were regarded as being significant or pure. According to Wyrick, the bowl and the box were both made of the same sandstone. Archaeologists have generally believed that the Decalogue and Keystone are hoaxes concocted by Wyrick himself. However, in 1861, Wyrick published a pamphlet containing his account of the discoveries and included woodcuts depicting, to the best of his ability, the inscriptions on the stones. A careful comparison of Wyrick's woodcuts of the Decalogue stone to the actual inscription shows that out of 256 letters, Wyrick made at least 38 significant errors in which he either made a legible letter illegible, turned a legible letter into a different letter, or omitted the letter altogether. Wyrick clearly did not understand the inscription's peculiar yet consistently applied alphabet, and therefore could not have been its author. Orson Pratt, apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day-Saints, wrote of the Decalogue stone, saying, "I have seen that sacred stone. It is not a hatched-up story." They were also taken to the most learned men of our country, who, as soon as they looked at them, were able to pronounce them to be not only ancient Hebrew, but they were also able to translate them and pronounce them to be the Ten Commandments. This, then, is external proof, independent of the scriptural proofs to which I have alluded, in testimony of the divine authenticity of the Book of Mormon. Are there any similar carved stones discovered anywhere else? Yes, here are photos taken by Rod Meldrum, president of the Firm Foundation, from his visit to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. He writes, quote, "The Decalogue stone discovered in an ancient mound in Newark, Ohio, is strikingly similar to these statues in Egypt, lending credibility to the authenticity of the stone." What is the connection between Egypt and the Newark Holy Stones? And what about the writing being in Hebrew? The possibility that the Newark holy stones were carved anciently in America by those who knew both Egyptian and Hebrew languages and customs makes an interesting connection to the Nephites of the Book of Mormon. After almost a millennia of being in the Promised Land, the prophet Mormon records that the Nephites were still using forms of Egyptian and Hebrew. And now behold, we have written this record according to our knowledge in the characters which are called among us the Reformed Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us, according to our manner of speech. And if our plates had been sufficiently large, we should have written in Hebrew. But the Hebrew hath been altered by us also. And if we could have written in Hebrew, behold, ye would have had no imperfection in our record. The Newark holy stones are currently on display in the Jonhnson-HumrickHouse Museum in Roscoe Village, Keystone, Ohio. Replicas of the Decalogue stone and Keystone may be purchased from the museum. Links of interest for the Newark holy stones can be found in the description section of this video. The next collection is a group of more than 4,000 stone, clay, and metal artifacts discovered in 1982 by Russell Burrows in an underground cave in Richland County, Illinois. A newspaper article in 1982 says, quote, "A caver named Russell E. Burrows, Colonel retired, discovered an outstanding cave in a remote valley in southern Illinois. The cave's walled-up entrance and its passages were buried in about 9 feet of silt, but in his explorations, Burrows has found quantities of objects that cannot belong here, according to the conventional historians." This is a rough drawing of the extensive cave network that Burrows discovered. He described finding many crypts and objects that fit a burial complex. As with other artifacts found in the 1800s, most experts immediately dismissed the Burrows findings as hoaxes, and Burrows himself was maligned, betrayed, and even physically threatened. He has not revealed the exact location of the cave, largely due to his mistreatment and concern of theft. In the course of crawling through the silt, Burrows came upon thousands of engraved stone slabs, bearing non-American art styles and inscriptions in ancient Mediterranean and Asian scripts. Here are some examples of what he found. Many of the stones have portrait carvings, and some include written characters. Many of the stones have obvious religious symbols inscribed on them. On the left is an apparent portrait of Jesus. A menorah and Star of David are above his head. The stone on the right shows a 7-candle menorah. Some stones include images that are very Egyptian in appearance. Again, we shouldn't be surprised to find items with Egyptian influence in America. There are numerous examples of the Nephites writing and perhaps carving scenes in the style of Egypt. Early in the Book of Mormon chronology, Nephi said this, "Yea, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians." The Book of Mormon further tells us that the brass plates were written in Egyptian. "For it were not possible that our father Lehi could have remembered all these things to have taught them to his children, except it were for the help of these plates. For he, having been taught in the language of the Egyptians, therefore he could read these engravings, and teach them to his children, and thereby they could teach them to their children, and so fulfilling the commandments of God, even down to this present time." One of the surprising findings from the Burrows Cave is an array of solid gold coins and ingots. Much of the gold that Burrows found was placed in a safe deposit box. Later, he realized that his associate had emptied the box and sold the gold for over $35,000. As for Burrows faking all of these items, it seems truly unbelievable that he would create hoaxes from solid gold that would have cost so much to make. Here are some more beautiful artifacts showing a variety of styles and materials. On this particular stone from Burrows Cave, We can see a man in a long robe raising his hand over a person crouched on the ground. Nearby is a group of pigs. The drawing appears to illustrate the story from the New Testament. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding, and all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. Heartland researcher Brian Nettles has translated a portion of this script shown in the close-up as to drive out, which perfectly corresponds to the story of the evil spirits driven out of the possessed man. The Burrows Cave stones and artifacts are currently in multiple private collections. Though the exact location of the cave is not known, there may be opportunities in the future to scientifically explore and document the area. The Bat Creek stone was recovered during a professional archaeological dig by the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of Ethnology in 1889 during its mound survey project in Loudoun County, Tennessee. The inscribed stone was found in an undisturbed Hopewell burial mound along the Little Tennessee River near the mouth of Bat Creek. The spot was about 40 miles south of Knoxville in what is now a Tennessee Valley Authority recreational area near Bat Creek. The mound itself has been plowed flat, and only its approximate location is known. The director of the Mound Survey Project, Cyrus Thomas, initially declared that the curious characters inscribed on the Bat Creek stone were, quote, beyond question letters of the Cherokee alphabet. However, the Cherokee writing system was only invented in 1819, and if the tablet was inscribed with Cherokee, this means that Mound 3, in which the stone was found, was much younger than the solid archaeological data that identifies it as much older. In the 1960s, Henriette Mertz and Corey Ayub both noticed that when the stone was rotated 180 degrees, the inscription actually appeared to be ancient Semitic. The late Semitic language scholar Cyrus Gordon confirmed that the characters are indeed Semitic, and specifically Paleo-Hebrew. According to him, the 5 letters to the left of the comma-shaped indentation read, from right to left, for Judea. He noted that the broken letter on the far left is consistent with mem, which makes the word plural, and instead reads, for the Judeans. In 1988, wood fragments found with the stone were carbon-14 dated to somewhere between 32 AD and 769 AD. Although a few of the letters could be taken for Cherokee in either orientation, no one has ever proposed a Cherokee reading of the inscription. The lone letter below the main line could be either an elf or a wa, in which case it might be a numeral indicating year 1 or 6, respectively, of some era. The 2 vertical strokes above the main line are test scratches made by an unknown party while the stone was at the Smithsonian sometime between 1894 and 1971. As with all our examples, there was controversy around the Bat Creek stone as well, even though it was found by Smithsonian employees during an official excavation. In 2004, some argued that the inscription was copied from an old illustration in an 1870 Masonic reference book. They asserted that the stone is therefore a 19th century forgery that must have been introduced by the Smithsonian field assistant who found it. Shown here is the entry in the Masonic book, an 1860s artist impression of how the biblical phrase, holy to Yahweh, would have looked in Paleo-Hebrew letters. However, the artist does not correctly write that phrase. Here are the 1860s illustration and the Bat Creek stone together for comparison, to see if the inscription on the stone is likely taken from the illustration. There are several differences between the two which I'll highlight. Both inscriptions contain two words reading from right to left. The illustration word ends with a he, which makes the word for Yahweh. The Back Creek word ends in a daleth, making the word for Judea. The Back Creek word also has a remnant of a sixth letter, presumably mem, which is completely absent from the illustration. The illustration shows a W as a third letter from the right, which is not on the stone. In Paleo-Hebrew, words are not separated by a space, as in English or modern Hebrew, but by a dot or short diagonal stroke between words. On the Back Creek inscription, the short diagonal comma separates the two words. There is a space separating the two words in the illustration, while there is a comma on the stone. This is significant because the comma on the Back Creek stone is a correct separator between the two words, whereas the illustration has a space, which is not correct. If a forger had copied the letters from the illustration, there would likely be no comma character, and instead there would be a space. This is a photograph of a shekel coin of the First Jewish War issued in 68 to 69 AD. The Paleo-Hebrew letters are similar to those on the Back Creek stone. The Masonic illustration and ancient coins do show that the Back Creek stone has an undeniable similarity to Paleo-Hebrew, and that this similarity should have been recognized in 1889 by any competent student of antiquities. The fact that some American archaeologists failed to see this similarity until it was pointed out by Mertz and Ayub demonstrates this inability or unwillingness to adequately classify and evaluate ancient material. Further, a petrographic analysis of the stone by the American Petrographic Services concludes, our geological findings are consistent with the Smithsonian Institute's field report written by John W. Everett in 1889. The complete lack of the orange-colored silty clay residue in any of the characters of the inscription is consistent with many hundreds of years of weathering in a wet earth mound comprised of soil and hard red clay. The inscribed stone and all the other artifacts and remains found in the mound with it can be no younger than when the bodies of the deceased were buried inside the mound. The Back Creek stone was stored out of sight in the back room of the National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. for many years. From August 2002 to November 2013, it was on loan to the Frank H. McClung Museum at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. It was then loaned to the Museum of the Cherokee Indian in Cherokee, North Carolina, where it has been on display upside down since 2015. This section shows a few of the many artifacts from the Michigan area. In Michigan alone, tens of thousands of inscribed slate, clay, and copper plates and other artifacts were found in 27 different counties between 1812 and 1919. These artifacts show that a once thriving civilization lived in the northern area of the present-day United States. Many were discovered by farmers and local residents, and as soon as they began showing them to experts, the artifacts were immediately dismissed as fakes. Why? Remember, according to the experts, there was no established cultures in America before Columbus, and certainly not ones with written language and advanced artistic skills. The experts would not consider any other explanation or give the artifacts serious study. They maintained the opinion that anything that indicated ancient civilization in America had to be fake. As a note, their theory of one or two people creating thousands of fake pieces which actually support the Book of Mormon is absurd. The accused fakers were not members of the LDS Church or supporters of Joseph Smith, and one of them was not even born yet when the first artifacts were found in Michigan. Wayne May has researched American artifacts for several decades and is arguably the most knowledgeable about the vast array of findings. As for the purported Michigan artifact hoax, He summarized these points in order for the artifacts to be faked in the 1800s. Cross the Great Lake Huron to get slate from Baraga, Michigan. Get copper from Kenowa, Michigan. Faker must know at least 3 ancient scripts: hieroglyphics, Assyrian, and cuneiform. Manufacture 10,000 plus artifacts from clay, slate, and copper with accuracy. Construct burial mounds in 27 counties without being seen before 1846 and bury those items. Find human bones to accompany some of the burials. And finally, avoid being killed by the native tribes. Unfortunately, because they were declared fakes, many artifacts were simply thrown away, although photographs exist showing the variety of the pieces as shown here. Other artifacts have been destroyed due to careless handling and shipping. Some have been pilfered and their whereabouts are unknown. Only a fraction of the artifacts that were originally found still remain. Here is one of the numerous slate tablets in the Michigan collection which has writing on it. While the characters appear to be a combination of known and unknown languages, there is one specific grouping of characters which appears very frequently. It was identified initially by Henriette Mertz and nicknamed the Mystic Symbol. Later it was determined to be 3 Hebrew letters read from right to left, Yod-He-Vah, or Jehovah. The mystic symbol is thought to represent the people of Jehovah, or a similar title or statement. Another is the son of the left hand, signifying unrighteousness. And another, the son of the right hand, signifying righteousness. In addition to the slate tablets, the Michigan collection includes many copper items, many pipes, even coins. Here we see 3 boxes, one made from slate and copper, and 2 made of clay with stamped decorations. The slate box on the left has been lost, with only the lid remaining. The clay box on the right has been broken into multiple pieces. The clay box in the center is completely lost, and this is the only known surviving photograph taken more than a century ago. Many artifacts have suffered from time and careless handling. These are some of the fragments as photographed by the Michigan History Museum in Lansing. The majority of the surviving artifacts are kept by the Michigan History Museum, though not on display for the public. Other artifacts are in a few private collections. One collection of ancient artifacts was discovered just inside the Canadian border. Several items were found on the Canadian side of Lake St. Clair in the early 1900s while a man was digging a basement for his house. He found this beautiful box which was made of slate with copper corners and fasteners. It is speculated that this served as a funerary box or urn to hold the ashes of the deceased. Along with the box, several other items were discovered as shown here. Here are photos of the sides of the box. Another item discovered with the box is this sundial, along with a copper rod. Several years ago, I studied this sundial in more detail and noted some of its features. These highlighted markings show the progression of hours of the day from approximately 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I speculate that the copper rod is meant to be placed in one of the 3 holes depending on the time of year, as indicated by the sun drawn on the lower left. This is an exact replica of the sundial that I created in order to handle it and to test its functionality. At the winter solstice, I inserted a copper rod the same length as the original into the lowest hole. The following images show the shadow as it progressed across the dial, from a testing latitude of approximately 42 degrees north. The sundial was found at approximately the same latitude in Canada and works very well at tracking the rod's shadow as the sun moves. If this sundial was used in a location significantly further north or south of 42 degrees, it would not match the progression of the sun correctly. The Canadian artifacts are still in the possession of the family of the man who discovered them. One of the most surprising sites in America with archaeological ruins is a site in Tennessee. In 1934, the Tennessee Valley Authority was constructing a dam which would flood a portion of the Clinch River in eastern Tennessee. Because the area to be flooded included a Hopewell Native American mound, a group of archaeologists were called in to excavate the site before the dam was completed. They made an amazing discovery when they uncovered the ruins of a large stone and wood structure. Here is an article from 1835 about the discovery. Archaeologists digging in the Tennessee Valley, not far from Norris Dam, recently unearthed an ancient temple site with 17 well-preserved skeletons resting on platforms of hard clay. It is impossible to tell just how long ago the temple was built, but the conditions of certain pieces of cedar wood found with the clay of the temple indicates beyond a reasonable doubt that the humans whose remains were found in the ruins of the structure lived and died several hundred years before Columbus set sail. The remains of ancient American Indians, supposed to be chieftains, were found near the temple. These headmen are believed by archaeologists to have led hordes of their people over the country long before Columbus arrived. The Book of Mormon gives us a possible explanation for the discovery of a temple site in Tennessee. And it came to pass that the Lord did warn me that I, Nephi, should depart from them and flee into the wilderness, and all those who would go with me. And we did take our tents and whatsoever things were possible for us, and did journey into the wilderness for the space of many days. And after we had journeyed for the space of many days, we did pitch our tents, and my people would that we should call the name of the place Nephi. Wherefore we did call it Nephi. Putting Lehi's first landing in the Florida area, then it seems possible that Nephi followed a river northward a great distance to find a suitable place to begin a new settlement. In the land of Nephi, the group established a community with permanent structures. And I did teach my people to build buildings, and to work in all manner of wood, and of iron, and of copper, and of brass, and so forth. And I, Nephi, did build a temple, and I did construct it after the manner of the temple of Solomon, save it were not built of so many precious things, for they were not to be found upon the land. Wherefore it could not be built like unto Solomon's temple, but the manner of the construction was like unto the temple of Solomon, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. Here is another photo and article. An aerial view of the complete ancient temple, the first of its kind ever found in the United States, and which was unearthed by the archaeological expedition headed by Professor W.S. Webb recently. The temple, found in almost perfect condition, was located about 30 miles above the Norris Dam site in the Tennessee Basin. It dates back hundreds of years before Columbus discovered America and antedates the Cherokee Indians. Today, the area is completely submerged by water as part of the Tennessee Valley Authority project. In this video, I've shown many artifacts that witness large civilizations once thrived in the eastern area of present-day United States. And these witnesses are supported by the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon completes the missing archaeologic puzzle piece as to the origin of the thousands of ancient American artifacts found in North America. There are countless books, articles, and videos that give much more information than I can. If you want to know more, I recommend, as a starting point, you consider Wayne May's new magazine series called Land of Promise, Uncovering Ancient America. In each issue are dozens of articles by prominent authors and researchers such as Wayne May, Bruce Porter, Jonathan Neville, David Hawking, Kevin Price, and many others. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the information and material presented.